created to have some fun together, sharing and singing. So, join and enjoy.
Our love for opera brings us together. Thanks for being with us in this trip.
Mi chiamano mio nome Lucia. And everybody knows, of course, everybody knows this part that we are addressing today in the dissection of Si mi chiamano Mimi. Uh, of course, this is the aria that follows Rodolfo's aria, which is also very well known. And I think that the best thing to say before we proceed is that we need to mention that even though they are individual or arias because they are solos themselves, we need to say that it is in fact a dialogue because what preceded are the words from Rodolfo that says after the when he's wrapping up la gelida manana la dolce speranza, he says, "Or che mi conoscete, now that you know me, parlate voi de parlate chi siete. Now you speak to me frankly. Please tell me who you are and what you do. Would you please do that?" So vi piace dir. That's exactly what Rodolfo is asking. He's asking in a dialogue, would you like to share that with me? And in response, what Katia just sang, sí, which means because many people get lost on why is this girl saying sí? She's saying sí because it's the answer to the question to Rodolfo. Vi piace dir, would you like to do it? And she says, yes, yes, they call me Mimi, even though my true name is Lucia. That's how it opens. So the C makes sense as a response to that dialogue. And it is important to consider that it is a dialogue because if you want to remain in the right context on how you are going to reply, and I wanted to link it to Rodolfo's aria, of course, coming from a tenor who wants to show he has a beautiful legato and beautiful high notes and beautiful Puccinian style, he's going to sing out loud. But if you think, put in your mind that this is a dialogue, means to people who are very close together physically. If you're speaking to someone physically and you are close and you are getting to know that person, you don't shout out, "Que gelida manina." It is softer, it is right in front of you. Same case when she replies, "Si mi chiamano Mimi." It's in front of you, Rodolfo. So she doesn't need to speak and sing out loud covering. Of course, I mean, you are going to do it because that's how you project your voice, but the expression of the voice or what you are transmitting needs to match that sensation that it is a dialogue. It is a conversation where the two of them at the end are going to fall in love. So I think that if you keep that in your mind, then everything will make sense. First, Rodolfo has shared, I am a poet, I write about this, I am poor, but the beauty that I have by my side makes me a millionaire, and has shared this, which is, we would say, very intimate information, very personal things. And Mimi will reply with hers also in that intimate, personal tone. Because if you don't match how what Rodolfo did matches to what Mimi is going to do, then you say, why is this girl talking about these fake flowers and that the winter and the April? Where does everything come from? It comes from the fact that the two boys are getting to know each other. So I have introduced myself. I am Rodolfo, and now it is Mimi's turn to introduce herself, and she is going to remember that I am going to put on the screen the score, but that I really read on paper what I have on my right. So if at some point what I'm reading, what you're watching on the screen doesn't match what we are saying, it's because I still have troubles with trying to work at the same time on the screen and on paper. So those would be my initial thoughts on this dialogue. I insist, they are individual solo pieces, but it is in fact a dialogue between the two of them. What would you like to add, Katia, to open today's program?
Let's remember that this beautiful opera belongs to this artistic movement named Verismo in singing. So in this case, the most important thing is the emotion, the intention, the text. Obviously, you need to have a right technique to do this in the best way possible and healthy. But it doesn't have to sound like Mozart or bel canto. It has to do more with what are you saying, not that much as of how are you saying it in a vocal sense. So yes, you have to understand the scene, what is going on. Rodolfo pretends that he hasn't found the key yet to uh, to feel Mimi still close, and they touch their hands and they are in the darkness, and so it's a very intimate moment, and you have to sing it in this context. It's pretty important.
This is also very important what you mentioned that it is part of the verismo because remember that also the verismo brings to us characters that you could find in real life. So could you find two poor young guys that meet and fall in love? You could certainly do so. So those times of Il Trovatore, those times of the Queens by Donizetti or La Cenerentola or Il Barbiere, all those characters are left behind. Now the opera is looking into a different direction, and it's not only that they are putting what could be real people, but also the singing. Of course, it is always artificial because in English nobody could say yes, my name is Lucia. Of course, nobody is going to extend Lucia, extend it that way. But in the sense that you are using words like that. Yes, my name is this, not the one that they call me. That's what they are. That's what this is about. And the style of speaking, even though we are going to make mention to the legatos, because again, Maestro Puccini has lots of legatos for Mimi here, it's not going to be the same legato, as we will explain, as it is, for instance, in Bellini or in Donizetti or in any other composer or a prior style where you understand that the beauty of the bel canto execution of the notes is different. So of course, yes, the emphasis on the words is important. And why don't we get started? So we have just mentioned that Katia has introduced the character Sì, mi chiamano Mimi, ma il mio nome è Lucia. Then she proceeds. La storia mia è breve, a te la guazzetta ricamo in casa e fuori. Notice that, as in other programs, that the lines of what is being sung by the female voice is in fact much more similar to what would be the spoken voice. Notice that everything is on the same height. For those that don't read music, just keep in your mind that if it is above means higher, if it is lower, of course, means they are lower notes. So they are all on the same height, which means there is no change in the note. La storia mia è breve. In fact, the duration, if you see it is the same symbol of the same music notation. So these two bars are sung in the same note and each of the syllables have the same duration. Of course, the soprano or the singer can make some adjustments if she thinks it makes sense to give more emphasis to one of these syllables for the purpose she thinks is worth it. So there is always this sort of freedom that, of course, many singers abuse of, but there is this freedom of making these small changes on keeping or emphasizing one of those syllables, but in fact, it is written the same. La storia mia è breve, a te la vasetta ricamo in casa e fuori. Son tranquilla e lieta, ed è il mio svago far gili e rosse. This whole part that I just read, la storia mia è breve, a te la vasetta ricamo in casa e fuori, son tranquilla e lieta, ed è il mio, ed è, this is the first time it is starting to evolve. If you notice, this was very, if we can say, flat or not much difference in the notes, but here she's starting to play with the voice, which means the actual aria is going to start right here when she says mi piacciono quelle cose. But going back to the text, so they call me Mimi, even though my true name is Lucia. La storia mia è breve, a te la osetta ricamo in casa e fuori. Son tranquilla e lieta del mio svago far gili e rosse. First point or first words just to describe herself as a woman that is going to have a simple life. Not no complications. I am not the Queen of England and I will have someone decapitated. No, that's not the case. Or I am a duke and I am going to do that. None of that. It's just that I am a woman who makes fake flowers at home. No more important than that. It's just what Mimi is going to tell us. And also, we need to say a little about the type of voice for Mimi. Mimi is best sung by a lyrical soprano, which fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you want to see it, there are maybe too many. Maybe 90% of the female voices are lyrical sopranos, which means this role would or may fit to 90% of the female singers. Maybe other 5% would be mezzos, maybe 2% contraltos, and the other would be high tessitura sopranos like Katia. So that's pretty much how. So out of 10 or out of 100, 90% possibility that you are speaking to a lyrical soprano. But in terms of tessitura, what does it imply, Katia?
I remember that I had once upon a time a teacher, and probably she was trying. I tried to understand what she thought. Probably she was trying to find my chest voice, and she gave me this song. Well, it didn't work, and it will never work. I mean, it is uh, a lovely aria, and I respect this song a lot. Uh, but yes, if you have a very light voice, as I do, even if you want to give this lyrical color and this intention of warmness, of intimacy, it will not work. If you have a lighter voice, you will sing as I forgot as a nightingale trying to be a girl that makes fake flowers, and you will be faker even. Yeah. So sorry. When you have the right voice, the right lyrical voice, it can be a masterpiece.
And if you remember from a previous video blog entry that I uploaded this week, I was sharing with you that there is this something that you are born with. This would be the case. So you are born a tenor, a baritone, a bass, a high soprano, or a mezzo, or whatever. So there is nothing else to investigate on that. The important part here is what you do with what you are given, because we just mentioned this is good for a lyrical soprano. But if the soprano is off pitch, if the soprano has problems with the tempo, if the soprano has problems with her legato, if her voice is not homogeneous, even if you have a beautiful native lyrical voice, Mimi will not work. Because people, since this is a very well known role, people are expecting a lot from the singer that does Mimi. So they say, yeah, but, and that could be the case for Maria Callas. Maria Callas was certainly not a voice for Mimi. She tried too hard to make her voice lighter to sound well. But truth is, and forgive me, you are a Calistan. I mean, you're a fan of Callas. Forgive me, but truth is that you compare hers to any other beautiful lyrical soprano, and not even the best, but just an average lyrical soprano will sound better because this is perfectly written for that kind of voice. With that being said, I wanted to also mention on the side of the interpretation that many times, because they do the same way tenors, they say, I am going to sing Gelida Manina. Oh, I am going to exaggerate everything. And that's what sopranos do also here. So they add legatos where there are not, in parts where it needs to sound more like a spoken voice, they add legatura. So they, look at how beautiful my legatos are. Or, I am going to exaggerate this phrase. Even if it doesn't make any sense, they could extend the duration. And so the habit, or yeah, the habit, or what most people have heard of Si mi chiamano Mimi, it's usually not what the composer, Maestro Puccini, wrote. We are used to many deformities, exaggerations of what was actually written. Which, by the way, Callas in her master classes understood it. Even though it was not her aria and she dared to record it, she understood it because I remember that she corrected a little girl and told her, you are exaggerating, you are overdoing everything. And Mimi is a simple girl. So, since Mimi is a simple girl, don't overdo anything that is not expressly done by the composer. So let's keep moving. As we have said that Mimi has explained, and we are actually about to start the aria here, and we have what we have mentioned in other programs also. It is not only andante; it is andante calmo with a beat or a rate of 54, which is super slow and requires the singer to be very smart so that the audience does not fall asleep. In meanwhile, she is singing. So andante lento is or andante calmo is very slow. I am looking at the copy that I have printed. The copy that I have printed, if you look at the screen, it says calmo 54, but the one that I have printed says 40. So if you thought 54 was slow, 40 is like, and moreover, for a voice like Katia who sings 32 notes per second.
But I have a story about. I remember that there was a contest at college, and it was for the Requiem by Fore, and I was the only one who sang Pie Jesu at 40. The only one. So I won.
So you're very familiar with 40. So
Yeah, so 54 suddenly doesn't look that bad.
if you know how to handle this very slow tempo.
Exactly.
Because for general public, what andante lento at 40 means is slow. The flow of the notes is going to be slow. So if it is naturally slow, there is really no need to overdo anything because it is naturally slow. But that also implies that the value of each of the notes is going to be long. And if it
Yeah.
is going to be long and you notice that you are singing something out of place, people is going to notice that because it is low. When you sing fast many times, or when we said in verismo, when there is the orchestration heavy and those happening, so many people want to notice that you committed an error. But in this part that the orchestration is still very low in volume. There are very few instruments with you. People will notice if you mess with the si mi chiamano mi, ma il mio nome Lucia. La storia mia è breve, a te l'aguaceta ricamo in casi e fuori, son tranquilla e lieta, e del mio svago far giliero sì. Mi piacciono quelle cose che han dolce malia. But let's go back before we go to that part because I would like to start explaining how it starts. So we started with sort of a parlato or quasi declamato in the first part where she says, ah, sì, mi chiamano Mimi, ma il mio nome è Lucia, la storia mia è breve, etc. That is like the introductory part, not really the aria itself, just the continuation of the dialogue. But when she's going to start now really s- singing in her part, that's another way to handle it. Because if not, it is going to be monotonous. If you sing everything like you just did in the first part, it's going to be this one. I think Simi Kamano Mimi lasts around 4 minutes and 30, depending on if it is 40 or 54 or any other addition by anybody else. So if you keep everything sounding the same, if you keep ta te ta 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 ti ti ta 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 tu, ti ta, we all are going to suffer. And yeah, most likely people will say, please, please, lady, finish your aria, wrap it up. Maestro, please do it faster. So that would be the first part. But when we are going to start the actual area that I have marked here, which brought us to the discussion of the 54 or 40, mi piacciono. Here is where she needs to. I'm going to use the word attack, but I know that in singing, attack means something differently. So I am going to use the word attack, not in the sense that the vocal technique implies. I am going to say that she's going to for the mi piacciono quelle cose che anzi, because this first part, look at the mi piacciono quelle cose, has to play very nicely with each of the notes. Mi piacciono quelle cose che ansi dolce. And immediately she is going to gain like if not accelerando, because I don't like to say accelerando, but one feels that the initial emotion is going to be different. And it's going to be different because, in fact, she's going to tell or to share with us something a little different. And this is, in this change, is where many sopranos fail. Because remember that we explain everything as if it really was easy, and it never is. Not when you're doing it. It's always easier when we need to explain, but it is not that easy when you are going to do it. Because remember that you're coming from si mi chiamano Mimì, ma il mio nome Lucia, son tranquilla e lieta del mio svago farciliero. And then you have to transmit this change. Mi piacciono quelle cose che anzi dolce. remember that for a composer, he doesn't need to write acelerando or change the tempo of the music. By just adding more syllables or more notes, he's giving us the instruction that this section goes faster, but faster is still within the style. So too much, too fast, and it doesn't make sense. As slow as in the first part, and you will feel bored. That's why these two changes are coming one immediately after the other. But the soprano needs to be smart. And this is a question that I wanted to ask you, Katia. In a singer who is preparing, because most singers work, and I just forgot the name of the device. Tac, 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 tac. It is not chronometer. It's the
Metrónomo.
Metronomo, yeah, the metronome. Most singers work with it, which works when you are working on your exercises. But when you are singing for a complete aria and when there are all these changes, this may not be the ideal way to do it. So, how would you suggest, or how would you tell a singer to prepare for this sort of changes? Mi piacciono così, che anzi dolce Maria. How do you manage these two, which are not two different tempi, in fact, but they are really sung in different tempi because of the number of notes sung? How would you suggest a singer who is studying to proceed on these changes?
Well, technically, it can make a sound in our heads, but if you try to understand it more naturally, or as I always say to my students, feel it orgánico, feel it like part of your body, of part of you. When you are introducing yourself to somebody that you like and that you are interested, you will easily talk about yourself. So there are natural inflections, there are natural things that you want to point to let this person know about you. So if you are thinking that you are with this person that you like and you're talking about yourself, the speed will naturally change. Mi piacciono quelle cose che anziché Maria che actually you're not changing your tempo.
No, no, the tempo is not actually singing, you're just singing more notes within each of the bars, which may
Right.
result in confusing and which may make many beginner singers fall in the trap of committing a mistake.
Yeah, and the track for the teacher would be probably to set this song to a to a study that is already starting. If
But
you
there are
have
many
an
teachers who
accountable,
do, and I know that you know many other teachers who say, "Ah, you're a beginner. Go for Mimi. See, mi chiamano Mimi is a simple aria to start with. It's not."
I was the victim,
You
like
were the
I
victim
said
yourself.
a few minutes ago.
Also, I wanted to mention now that you helped us with the tempo of this that pauses, because I remember a music teacher who always liked to say pauses or silences, because in fact for musical writing they are called silence. So silences are as important as notes. And when we were mentioning that there was a change, mi piacciono quelle cose, there is a silence there. In the recordings, I usually call
Yeah.
them pauses because I don't want to. Even the two words are confusing. Pause and silence can be confusing. So, but for the sake of simplicity, let's say that it is a pause, at least a pause for the singer, but it makes sense in a dialogue. I like all those things. You make a pause because you want to give the emphasis to the following phrase. Che ansi dolce Malia che parlano d'amor, di primavere. You are conveying a whole idea. Before conveying that whole idea, you need to make a pause. It's like when somebody's asking, and what is it that you like? Well, I like all those things that carry magic. You see, that silence was natural, and Maestro Puccini understood it. That's what that silence is doing there. You may think that he wanted to give a breathing opportunity to the singer, but Maestro Puccini is usually not that generous. He doesn't think that singers breathe. So I
No.
he did it because he wanted it to be very natural in the way of speaking. So, what are those things that I love or what I like? I like those things that have these magical accents that speak to me with love of springtime. That is the complete idea that is carried in this part and that Katia just sang for us. Which let's remember also that Puccini liked to add diminuendos, crescendos, ligaturas, piano here, mezzo forte there, ritenendo more, adding to a world of complexity in the mind of the poor singer because I wanted to make reference to this. Of course, you notice that Katia just sang it in one breath. Cansi dolce Malia che parlano d'amor, very briefly, d'amor, and then again di primavere. Of course, if you're a beginner singer, you may say, I'd rather die than singing this on pitch.
And probably you will.
Probably you will, because another thing that I wanted to mention is that when you're trying to sing and you know that it is low, you're trying to keep your breath here and you don't let it flow. So by the time you need to go to the high note, if you let too much air leave, by the time you want to reach the final primavera, you run out of breath. Primavera, primavera, and the re, which by the way is the longest syllable of the complete phrase, is cut because you run out of air. So there are way too many things happening in one single phrase, which makes me believe that Puccini really didn't like singers. You need him to increase to give this note very briefly, you then sustain more, then you rise a little for D, then another short note in pre, and then you you diminish for half the value of a note, and then you continue until you reach vere, and you want the primavere to sound longer and with a very nice sound. There are way too many demands in a very short passage that, of course, may derail things, not only in terms of pitch, but also in terms of breath. So the singer has to be very smart in how he wants to manage his resource. Do you have another advice for singers when facing? Because the other part, che mi piacciono quelle cose che anzi dolce Maria, but right after, che parlano d'amor di primavere, and you need to manage.
Yeah, well, it can be also a little exhausting to sing in the same pitch zone for for very for a very important number of notes. When you are moving in the same zone, it can be exhausting. So try to don't stand and settle in every note because it won't work. It's not help me please, Ricardo Calderon.
I don't know how to say it in English. Neither.
Okay. Well, we have already seen this symbol that holds the note. That
Mhm.
it's an arc with the little dot. Well, it's not a calderon, and for a reason, because you will get with no air. So just make a little accent in that and move as fast as possible because you have a long note later. And in this E, in this E, when you have a long note, I would suggest that don't sound as a car beep, and it sounds like a dead note. Please don't ever do that in long sounds. I try to work with my students in these long notes as a series of many fast notes that will bring you life, that will make your sound and your note moves even when it's the same pitch for many seconds.
Yeah, yeah, it is true. Many singers lose the vibrato or the natural, beautiful sound of their voices and tend to sound too plain, like too
Yeah,
monotonous.
and even your pitch can start to load the high note. Try to
Yeah,
move your voice,
yeah, absolutely.
your air.
So this is the first, well, after this is the hardest challenge of the first part because we are going to continue. And notice that we have reached a small peak in the area, not only in the notes, but also in the emotion, now that she has shared that she loves the springtime. Going back to calm, almost like speaking, che parlano di sogni e di chimere. Also, now that we are going, we have mentioned it in previous program. When we reach this area of the voice of a soprano, which could be the lower notes, you cannot give or sound like Ulrika because it will not work. It is not Ulrika singing Mimi. You also have to be careful, as Katia explained in a previous program, with these parts. Also, you're going to get tired. So you not only have to be careful in how you reach those high notes and how you still sound nice with an E, but you also now have to sound nice when you're reaching your lower register. And because it is very common that sopranos tend to lose the support here and tend to sound, even if they are natural lyrical sopranos, tend to sound very childish because they lost the correct support of their low notes. And many times, way too many times, we can't even hear her because she's not singing primavera. It is primavera, the phrase. I want to read it printed. Remember that on the screen. Vivo sola soletta. Now I have problems in finding it in my printed version. Che parlano di sogni e di chimere, di chimere. Sopranos tend to sound like chimere, like like now they are being drawn, drawn in water, or someone has cut their throats because they really don't know how to sound again with a nice vibrato, well placed voice uh, for saying this phrase chimere, which needs to be not overdo the chest voice because that will go the other way around, but still sound and project. Would you like to go back to that advice, Katia?
Sure. Well, we in the best of the case, we will be singing with our mixed voice, head but chest voice. If when you are abording a deeper pitch, don't ever lose the highest part of your voice, or it will settle into chest voice, and yes, you will sound like Carmen or something like E parlano canzoni di me. Please, no, you are a Bohemian girl. And yes, if your voice is only in the highest part of your head, no, I used to mention to my students, you have to use your entire voice, use your entire verticality, but you will be using different percentages.
Percentage? Uh-huh.
Yeah, often uh, I'm using a little bit more of my chest voice, obviously because of the pitch, but never losing my head voice. So if I have to reach a high pitch immediately, if I have to do that, my voice would be ready because I'm not setting my sound too much deep. So try to think of your voice vertical and as a single piece. Not chest voice, but head voice, but no, use everything all the time.
Because in fact, it is about to happen what you just mentioned. Quelle co- And then immediately after the cose, then she has to jump. If not her high register, because this is not the high register, you may fall in the trap, and it happens very often on how do you make this sound nicely. Cose chiamano poesia, and then falls back to the low register of the female voice. So many people think, it's difficult because the high notes come. No, my friend, it can be difficult because you're playing in the center, then you're moving to the low, keeping the low, moving back to the center, and then going back to the low. Everything in between just 5 bars. So all those changes happening very often. Um, and that's why it is very necessary that sopranos work correctly in their whole register. If they don't work in a good mix throughout the whole register, they are never going to be able to get away with this aria. This aria, if you notice, it is not drama. We're not saying, it is requiring profound, strong notes. She's Turandot. Not, she's not even Turandot. It's
Spoiler
just
alert, it's not dying yet.
not. Yeah, she's not dying. Yeah, she's happy. And she's fine. But still, you have to be able to listen to the voice of the soprano in this part, because it happens even when you are singing it with piano accompaniment, and your voice is not comfortable in in that area of your voice. People have problems in listening to you because the voice, as I was sharing, it's like you were drowned in water. What is the soprano saying? What's she doing? What is And you go back to listening her again when she goes to Si mi chiamano Mimi il perché. Now she sounds again as we were listening before. But let's go back to this part, because now we are reaching chiamano Mimi, insisting il perché non so. Sol la mi fa, and there is a change in the tempo, allegretto moderato. Now, sol la mi fa, il pranzo da me stessa, non vado sempre a messa, ma preguasa il Signor. Remember, now Maestro Puccini is doing the opposite. Even though he has given us a much faster tempo, now he's slowing it down artificially by the number of syllables. Ma preguasa il Signor, vivo sola soletta, là in una bianca cameretta, guardo sui tetti, and again, guardo sui tetti, e in cielo. Here, I wanted to skip this part unless Katia would like to add something to this. Sola mi fa il pranzo Personally, I don't think it carries any problem with the height of the notes or with the breath or with the area of the voice. Personally, I think it basically works. Unless you see there is a challenge here that I am not observing?
No, no, no. I was thinking that probably did this part is the easiest one of the area. It sings by itself. You don't have to make an extra effort in this part.
But now it is the part where the soprano needs to prove that she is a good lyrical soprano because she has to decide, and many sopranos do a legato here. Quando suinteti in cielo. Then there is what I call a pause or a silence. There is a pause or a silence, which means you stop it here because the following phrase starts ma cuando viene. What many sopranos do is that they do a ligatura between cello and ma with only a very, very, very brief silence between the two phrases. So, en cello, silence, ma, but if the soprano does the other way around, she would say, en cello, ma, cuando vienen los That is very effective, but it is very dangerous if you don't manage your breath correctly. So make sure that if you want to do something to show that you are good, make sure that you can do it live. Because otherwise it may end up in disaster. If you cut it in the wrong area, people is going to realize. So instead of saying, ah, how beautiful it sounds, in cielo, ma cuando, bien lo, no, if you breathe there,
Mm.
no, please never do that. So I think if you agree, Katia, that the advice is first try it as written and do improvements later. But don't do the other way around. Don't start adding and adding and adding and
Yeah,
deform.
probably you can't take ma cuando bien immediately after cello, but I think that this rest it's also because you have to prepare yourself for the next mood. You came from this happy part, but now there is something here that makes me feel like a little blue. She's talking about not not spring anymore. Uh, she mentions first this the end of the winter, and she's about to explode in her emotions. Probably she's not thinking of Rodolfo anymore. She's thinking about herself completely. So you need to rest, you need to think, you need to feel. I would respect the pause totally. Cielo, ma quando viene lo cielo, il primo sole è mio. This part is for herself. It's not for Rodolfo. So please take this rest and make it yours and use it wisely because it's there for a reason.
And this also brings us to the idea that this aria has many moments. This one, ta 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 ta, si mi chiamano mi, and the initial almost quasi parlato part, and she went now for her lower register, and now this idea around winter, and then it's going to come the part where there is the voice of the soprano in expansion. So at least there are 5 or 7 moments in this area which make it less monotonous. Because to be truth, uh, maybe 95% of the sopranos do it the wrong way and sing Mimi in the same tone with the same volume, and we just think, oh, it is a beautiful, nice aria. Yes, but it has many moments. So the soprano really needs to understand if you're going to make a pause properly, if you are going to change, as I was saying, if you're going to change something, please make sure that it actually works. Because if it doesn't work, why are you investing your efforts in that? Because also, as Katia mentioned, you are preparing for this that you are now going to sing in your comfortable, most of the time in your comfortable area of the voice, and you are going to sing louder. The score printed that I have here says con grande espansión, which means your voice is now going to captivate everybody. Il primo sole mio, germoglia in un vaso una rosa. Again, you don't overdo, don't exaggerate on your chest register, but still that somebody hears you, that it sounds well, that you have nice harmonics there. Foglia, foglia, l'aspio, così gentile il profumo d'un fior. This is the first part where you, or the second part at least, this one more than the previous one, where you can show that you have a very beautiful voice, a very beautiful breathing, a very beautiful volume, but you do it wisely. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And if you notice, it is built in a similar way as in the previous passage where we talk the primavere, primavere, similar way of building it, but you are approaching the end. People know that you are approaching the end. So you can, if you want to, you can take a little more liberties wisely because you still have some bars to come. You don't want to run out of armor before you reach the end. Um, Ma il fior ch'io faccio, ahimè, i fior ch'io faccio, ahimè, non hanno odore. Altro di me non le saprei narrare, sono la sua vicina che la in fuori d'ore viene importunare. It is very curious that the way this aria is built is opposite to Rodolfo's. Even though Rodolfo also speaks after the high C if he wants to sing it, for Rodolfo there really is a high note, a whole long note. But there is, for the soprano there is not. And since there is not, that's why I was suggesting that you make the maximum out of this part because this is the final part where you will be able to show what your voice can do. Because after that, you're basically speaking, mai fior che faccio ahimè, fior che faccio ahimè, non hanno odore, altro di me non lo saprei narrare, blah, 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 blah. So use this part to show your vocal capacities wisely. Would you like to suggest something else for the final part, Katia?
Yeah, I think that that wisely is the key here. In Spanish, in Mexico, we have an expression that says "echar toda la carne al asador,"
Hmm.
which means to give everything from the beginning. And if you do that, what are you gonna give later? So yes, as many, this is your first area, you have to show off many things, but many things. You have to show off that you can control your intensity, that you have a good line, you have a good breath, you have a good spoken voice. There are many things to show off here, not just in the most brilliant part. And I think that is a very interesting ending because you have to let the people want more from you. If you give everything well, they already heard you, and for the next number, thanks, Mimi. Bye. You have to make it interesting. So you have to end this softly after the brilliant part, making the people want to hear something else from you. Altro che non le saprei narrare, sono la sua vicina che l'aria in fuori d'ora importunare. That's it.
Exactly. And so,
Enough.
enough. That is enough. No, no need to add anything. So with this, we are closing today's program. Anything else, Katia? Final words of advice, suggestion for people listening to us?
Well, we can fall in the trap that is an easy song because there are not so many agilities, there are not so many high notes, but definitely it's not for a beginner. Uh, it's not 20th century yet, but there are only 4 years left for 20th century. So the music here is completely different to Mozart. Um, it's not classic anymore. So there are changes in the times, in the figures, um, in speeds, in intentions. So if you are a beginner and sorry, but if your teacher asks you to sing this, no, you have to be a mature singer for approach to music like this. So please talk about with your teacher or search for another opinion, and probably you will have to change something there.
Yeah.
Really.
If you have a singing teacher and tells you, "Hey, you're starting, but you can already handle me," he's certainly not a good teacher. Look for someone else. So,
No, no.
with that being said, thanks everybody. I also want to thank, because I was sharing with Katia that as of this week, we reached 572 cities listening to us in 82 countries, and that's something that we really wanted to celebrate and thank people for all of that. We really, really, really feel you. We really appreciate that you keep listening to us and that our number of listeners keep growing. Thank you very much, and we'll be seeing soon as of next week because we have episode 2 for the season of spectacular singing. Thank you. Bye bye.
You can follow our channel for the latest updates and more content. Opera We Love Singing, in just one word. Link in the description of the episode.